I'm going to call this council meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda that the Council Township of North Huron accept the agenda for the April 15th, 2019 council meeting with as amended for removing 6.2 in bylaw 11.4. Do I have a mover? Kevin will move it. Paul's going to second it. All in favor? Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Go ahead.
Yes, for Mr. Clark, number 6.3, I was given a letter that I'm within the 60 meters, so I'll decline any discussion on that. Thanks.
Seeing none other, we'll move on. Public comments. If there's anybody in the public that would like to speak about anything on the agenda tonight, there's a 2-minute time period for anybody that would like to step up and speak. Seeing none, we shall move on. Consent agenda that the Council Township of North Huron hereby adopts the consent items 5.1.1 to 5.1.3. And further, the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive consent items 5.2.1 to 5.2.3. Anybody like to speak on that before we ask for a mover or a second? Go ahead, Chris.
5.2.3, we still need to have Viola give us results for Belgrave for the water sampling and water testing. It's just, I've been after it and we just need it. The information's there.
So, Sean, can we put a time on this?
Yes, thank you, Reeve. What I'll do is I'll ensure that Morris Turnberry has already had it presented. If it's gone through their council, then we're entitled to see it. They had asked that they be given time to take it to their council.
So when's their meeting in accordance to ours?
I'm sure I can get it now. It's most likely, we had Viola here last week. It's most likely I can have it for the next council.
And if there is any hesitation, could you tell them your council is starting to pressure you so we can move that along?
I don't foresee any problems.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So then I call, may I have a mover? Anita, and a seconder is Chris. Any, all in favor? Carries. Okay. 6.1, can we have Nathan Marshall, run, Phil, run?
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Nathan.
I believe everybody received in their package information about Phil's run. So coming up May 6th to the 10th. Please confirm if you did not receive that. Yeah, you got it. Perfect. May 6th to the 10th is Canadian Mental Health Week. And Phil Main is the morning show for Classic Rock 94.5, and he will be running 120 kilometers over the course of 5 days. So it's 5 24K runs. There's 5 different towns, and he's actually kicking the first one off on the Monday, the 6th, from Blythe to Wingham. And that's in connection with Lex Talk and Listen and Lexi Brown. So Phil is partnered with Youth and Mental Health. So there's 5 different organizations, and that's the one he's partnered with locally.
That's fantastic.
Yes, and it's just to raise awareness. There will be barbecue. I believe the community's invited out to that as well at the high school. Phil will finish his run the last 1.5 kilometers around the track at the high school. And yes, there's barbecue, a play. And if anybody's interested, they can find us on Facebook or on our website, classicrock945.ca.
Thank you very kindly for that.
Not a problem.
We'll try to put the message out for you, Nathan.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your night.
Yep, you have a good night. Okay. We're going to move now to 6.3, Committee of Adjustment hearing, file number MV03-2019. It's for application owners Steve Clark and Linda Arthur Fitzgerald. Is Laura here? I see Laura. Oh, Laura, do you want to take over now? Thank you. Just a sec, Laura. I'm running half on one wing here tonight,
Okay,
so.
I'll get the screen set up.
All right. Okay. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adjourn the regular council meeting at 6:05 PM to enter into Committee of Adjustment hearing. Do the second one at the same time or second? Okay. Do I have a mover? Trevor and Anita, all in favor? Passes.
Good evening, Council. I have a full docket of planning items for you tonight. So I'll begin with the minor variance as you sit as the Committee of Adjustment. So this is the first minor variance application being presented to this council. A minor variance is a planning application when someone has requested to develop or construct something that has not met one of the provisions of the zone that's on their property. So it's different than a zoning amendment because they're not asking to change the zone on their property, but they're asking for relief from one of the specific provisions. So this might mean that they're building more than the maximum lot coverage, they might not meet one of the setbacks, or in the case of this application, they're exceeding the maximum height for a structure. So a minor variance is reviewed by a planner and made a recommendation to the Committee of Adjustment as appointed by the council, and they are the approval authority for minor variances. So tonight we have the minor variance application MV03-2019. Changing up there. Make sure it didn't change on your slides. There. So the applicant is Steve Clark, and it's for the property of 256 Summit Drive in Wingham. So the applicant is proposing to construct a single 1.5 story detached garage. Sorry, let me find my report here. I have a lot of papers tonight.
I know the feeling.
There we go. So they're proposing to construct a 1.5 story detached garage to replace the existing detached garage. Currently, the subject property also contains a house. The subject property is designated residential in the North Huron official plan and is zoned R1, residential low density. So you can see here, this is a red outline around the subject property. And this is a photo of the subject property taken from Summit Drive, and you can see the existing detached garage there at the back. So minor variance application under the Planning Act is required to be given 4 tests for its appropriateness and compatibility for good planning. One of the 4 tests is that the application meets the intent of the North Huron official plan. As mentioned, the property is designated residential, and a detached garage is considered a normal permitted accessory use for a property that is residential in nature. And so long as it continues to maintain the residential nature of the property and complies with the neighborhood character. The second test is that it meets the intent of the North Huron zoning bylaw. The subject property is zoned R1, residential low density, which does permit a detached garage as a permitted accessory structure secondary to the residence on the property. The provisions in the North Huron zoning bylaw permit a maximum building height of an accessory structure to be 4.5 meters. The applicant is proposing to construct the detached garage at 5.3 meters, thereby asking for relief from the zoning provisions for 0.8 meters in height. The height for a detached garage is calculated by the mean height, which is the floor grade to the average height between the eaves and the roof peak. So in this case, this is how we calculated the 4.5 maximum and 5.3 proposed building height, thereby requiring the relief of 0.8. In this case, this is still under 50% of the maximum building height permitted for a single detached residence in the R1 zone. and the proposed garage is still under the maximum lot coverage for an accessory structure. The footprint is not oversized for the property, thereby reducing the likelihood of a visually crowded property and dwarfing the surrounding houses. The third test is that it's an appropriate development for the subject lands. It's proposed to be constructed in approximately the same location as the existing garage, seen in the photos here, and utilizing the existing driveway. The subject property is on a residential street, but the abutting property to the south with the clearest view of the new garage is the Wingham standpipe, as you can see in the top photo there. The abutting property to the rear is the parking lot for the Wingham District Hospital. So the two angles that would have the clearest view of the new detached and higher garage are not residential in nature, and thereby it's not expected to have a significant impact on the neighboring properties. The fourth test is that the application is minor in nature, so it is still falls under what is considered a minor variance. This relief sought for the new height of the detached garage is approximately 18% higher than what's currently permitted in the North Huron zoning bylaw, and is considered appropriate and minor in nature for the size of the property, the abutting non-residential uses, and the surrounding neighborhood and character. These are the proposed exterior elevations of the garage, so you can see at the approximate 1.5 story height. So I am proposing that North Huron Committee of Adjustment approve this minor variance with the two conditions that have been attached. The first is that the garage is built as shown in the exterior elevation drawings that were submitted with the application, and the second is that it's valid for a period of 18 months from the committee's decision. And these recommendations and conditions have been reviewed with the applicant.
Okay, so 7.2, we already had a comment from the Huron County Planner. 7.3, comments from the applicant or an agent. Does the applicant want to add anything?
They're here tonight.
Okay, they're not here tonight. I guess that would answer that question. 7.4, comments from other. Anybody wish to speak to the application? Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we'll move on. 7.5, the Committee of Adjustment members, questions or comments? Trev?
Laura, so the following condition about the garage being shown in the exterior elevation is to be built that way.
Yes.
Is that drawing provided to the CBO as part of so when they do their issuing of their permit and do their checking, that they're confirming that there is being built to what is actually the condition of this adjustment?
Yes, the CBO saw the drawings as part of the circulation and then would review that it's the same as proposed during the application.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Through you, Reeve. What is the final use? Do you know? Like, there'll be a second floor.
Mm-hmm. So I did speak with the applicant about this. So he does have the potential at this height for two interior storage options. The first would be a loft, so that it is the second floor to provide storage above the garage unit. Otherwise, there is the potential to have not a second floor, but instead a car stacking option. Since he does have several cars, that would allow basically to jack up a second car and store another one underneath without having the car stored on the driveway.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. We're looking at 7.6 recommendation, 7.6 recommendation of the Huron County Planning Development Department. I think that throws it back over to you.
Yes, recommending approval with the conditions as included in the report.
Okay. And 7.7, recommendation to the Council of the Committee of Adjustment. With the effect of the public and agency comments on the decision of the council as per 1.8, the letters A or B from the chart or received comments.
Yes, so this is where council can use the chart that's probably
yes.
kept in the drawers of their desk. So You're choosing one of the options, one of the numbers with column A and B. So to summarize the comments received for this application, no comments were received from members of the public, and no concerns were identified with staff, and a positive recommendation from the planning board.
So if council wants to, it's 2A and 1B. Okay, is everybody okay with that? Are we okay with that? Okay. Then the Committee of the Adjustment hereby approves the minor variance file MB03/19 as it applies to Plan 443 South Part Lot 2, Concession 1, Part Lot 4, 258 Summit Drive, Wingham, Ward, application owners Steve Clark, and Linda Arthur Fitzgerald. Do I have a mover?
So move.
Trevor and Anita seconded it. All in favor? We have it passed.
Thank you.
Right here. Okay. Okay. Ruling of the Committee of Adjustment, minor variance procedure following public meeting. The Secretary Treasurer sends within 10 days a certified copy of the decision indicating the last day of appealing it to the LPAT. If no appeal lodged after 20 days, after 20-day objection period has expired and no appeal has been lodged, the decision of the Committee of Adjustment is final and binding. The Secretary Treasurer shall notify the applicant. If a notice of appeal is lodged, if within 20 days of the Committee of Adjustment making a decision, the appeal is lodged with the Secretary Treasurer outlining the reasons for such an appeal, and said appeal is accommodated by the required fee of $300, the Committee of Adjustment no longer retains jurisdiction over the application. If a proper appeal is lodged of the Secretary Treasurer is required to provide proper notice to the LPAT. That's it. Okay. And we're just going to ask for adjournment that there be no further business before the Committee of Adjustment. The public hearing is hereby adjourned at 6:20. Do I have a mover? Trevor and Kevin's going to second it. All in favor? Carries. Okay. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby recommend approval of the consent application report C16-2019 owner.
Could we just back up a little?
Yeah.
We need to do the resolution.
Okay. I'm going to get you to go ahead and read the resolution.
So we've come back into regular session. So we need a motion from council that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby accept the resolution of the Committee of Adjustment that the minor variance file MV03/2019 as it applies to 258 Summit Drive, Line 443, South Part Lot 2, Concession 1, Part Lot 4, Wingham Ward, Township of North Huron. Applicant owners Steve Clark, Stephen Clark, and Linda Arthur Fitzgerald be approved with the following conditions. The detached garage be as shown in the exterior elevation drawings that accompany the application. The variance approval is valid for a period of 18 months from the date of committee's decision. So we need a motion.
Do I have a mover? Rick? Trevor? All in favor? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Now we're
Then we go to.
Now we're gonna go to this one. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby recommend the approval of the consent application report number C16-2019. Owner Anthony and Catherine DeBoer. Property description 230 Morris Street, Lot 4 and 5, Plan 71, Block K, Blythe, Township of North Huron, with the conditions in the report.
Yes, I'll present
Thank
for that application. Thank you. So this is file C16-2019 for the subject property of 230 Morris Street, applied for by Catherine DeBoer. So this is for a severance application to create a vacant lot in the village of Blythe. And the area to be severed is approximately 809 square meters, with the retained to be approximately 809 meters. So the existing subject property would be split in half. The zoning on the property is R1 residential low density, and the current designation in the North Huron official plan is residential. So I was assisted by the current student planner in the planning department, Selena, who assisted me with this application. So just wanted to give a shout out to her. She's away right now, otherwise she would have gotten a chance to present. So hopefully later in the year for you guys. So the existing property currently has an existing dwelling and a barn. The applicant has indicated that the barn on the property, which is currently being used for storage, would be removed in the near future. During the circulation of the property, of the application, there were no comments or concerns identified by North Huron staff or other agencies circulated, or any comments received by members of the public. So you can see here, this is the aerial photo with the retained property outlined in green and the proposed severed area outlined in red. Being designated residential in the North Huron official plan, the severance policies support intensification and infill in built-up areas such as the village of Blythe. Consents that have the effect of infilling in these areas without undue extension of municipal services and are appropriate for the scale and developed area are encouraged and promote keeping the existing residential character of the neighborhood. This is the submitted sketch showing the similar outlines of proposed severed and retained areas from the applicant. You can see from this photo, this is the existing residence and the vacant area on the subject properties. And this photo also shows the vacant area of the proposed lot to be created. The proposed consent would create a vacant infill building lot of a size consistent with the character of the neighborhood and addresses the need for residential lots in an area already with an established residential character and utilizes infill and intensification, thereby being supported by the North Huron official plan policies. Currently being zoned residential low density, there's no proposed zoning change for this application as the existing residence is appropriate for the R1 zone and the vacant lot would also be appropriate for the R1 zone for the future construction of a single detached dwelling or other structures permitted in the R1 zone of the North Huron zoning bylaw. So I am recommending approval, that North Huron Council recommend approval of this application with the included conditions, which include the standard conditions of the 1 year time to satisfy the conditions from the notice of decision, the sum of the $500 to be paid in lieu of parkland, and either a survey or a registrable description being submitted to the county.
We've already read the motion. You're finished now?
Yeah.
So I've already read the motion, but I'll reread the motion, okay? The motion is the council of the Township of North Huron hereby recommend approval of the consent application report C16-2019, owner Anthony and Catherine DeBoer, property description 230 Morris Street, lots 4 and 5, plan 71, block K, Blythe, Township of North Huron, with the conditions in the report. Do I have a mover? Christopher and Kevin. All questions? All in favor? Carries.
Okay, thank you.
The Wingham Creek draft, Laura's going to present the approval of extension or denial of extension.
So this application is before you tonight from the owner Wingham Creek A2A Development Inc. with the applicant Ryan Gutter from Weston Consulting on A2A's behalf. So this applicant seeks an extension to the draft plan of subdivision approval. So this is for the Wingham Creek subdivision located on the east side of Wingham. So an aerial photo so you can see the subject property. The history is that the plan of subdivision was granted, well, before the plan of subdivision was granted, this land prior to 2007 was annexed from Morris Turnberry and was added on to the urban boundary of Wingham. It was owned by a private landowner and was then sold to Wingham A2A Development Inc. So it was not owned or obtained by North Huron. It was a private transaction who then sought the plan of subdivision to be given draft approval. So the plan of subdivision was granted draft approval with conditions by the County of Huron on July 2nd, 2014. And in 2017, A2A Development Inc. requested an extension of the draft approval. So this means that during the initial 3-year period, they were unable to satisfy all of the conditions that were given when they were given draft approval. So they sought an extension for a further time period to address those conditions so they could ultimately receive final approval of the subdivision. In 2017, at this request, county granted a 2-year extension with the addition of a condition that phase 1 of the subdivision was registered within the extension period, which lapses this year, July 2nd. The applicant is requesting a further extension of the draft plan approval. No other changes to the draft plan have been requested, and the effect of extending draft plan approval would be to provide an additional number of years for the applicant to satisfy all the conditions before the further lapse date. The subject lands are have a total area of 36.9 hectares, so approximately 91 acres, and are designated residential and parks and open space in the North Huron official plan. They have a variety of zones on them, including open space, medium density residential special holding zone, and low density residential special holding zone. The approved draft plan that was given draft approval in 2014 is in 3 stages. Phase 1 included approximately 11.5 hectares for about 250 units of residential housing in low and medium densities. Phase 2 and 3 included approximately 8.5 hectares of future development for another 214 residential units, and the remainder was proposed to be addressed at the time of that development need. The subdivision plan was proposing extensions of existing streets in Wingham into the subdivision, as well as creation of new streets and the extension of services. So you can see this is the location on the Wingham zone map. And this was the draft plan that was given approval in 2014 with all of the phases on the plan. At the time of the plan of subdivision application, it was calculated that the subject property represented 92% of Wingham's undeveloped residential land. North Huron Council and Huron County Council recommended that in 2014, it was given for draft approval, but since then, the demand for vacant residential building land has increased, and there has not been significant movement on this subdivision. The Planning Act does allow approval authorities to grant further extensions, but the previous extension was granted with the new condition that was added to ensure progress was made to create residential lots in Wingham and address the demand for housing. It was clearly stated at that time that North Huron Council may not support a further extension unless phase 1 was registered before the lapse date, which again is this July. Since that time, some conditions of draft approval have been met, including obtaining clearance letters from Hydro One, Union Gas, and Maitland Valley Conservation Authority pertaining to phase 1A and 1B, coordination with Canada Post for phase 1 community mailbox locations, and preparation of road names for the streets in the subdivision. No information has been provided to address any engineering concerns or the subdivision agreement that would be required to be entered into with North Huron. To date, the steps completed for Wingham Creek subdivision are limited and do not reflect the urgency for progress as communicated by North Huron in 2017. So there are several factors for council to consider. If an extension is not granted, allowing the subdivision approval to lapse, anyone who wishes to build at a future subdivision on this property would have to begin from the beginning. So they would have to redo all of the studies and submit a new plan for approval. And one thing to consider is that even with the lapse of the current plan of subdivision, this does not guarantee that the land would be open for other developers. It would remain with A2A Development, Inc. Economic factors to consider are that the existing lack of housing opportunities or attraction for new residents to North Huron due to insufficient housing, and negative consequences over the long term for other residential development by having lands designated and ready for development, but not moving forward. So with this in consideration, I am recommending that North Huron Council pass a recommendation to Huron County Council denying the request by Weston Consulting for an extension of the draft approval plan of subdivision, and that your resolution is forwarded to the county for their consideration at the county council meeting.
Thank you, Laura.
Oh, sorry, I will add, we did receive comments. They were forwarded to council as well as on your desk for this evening. This was comments submitted by Weston Consulting in lieu of attending tonight, and they did address that they did submit the request for extension, and they understand that I'm recommending that that county council deny the request, and they said that they will accept the resolution, whether it be a recommendation for denial or approval, but they do advise that their client, Wingham Creek A2A Development, intends to develop the lands in accordance with the approved zoning on the property and will be putting forward an implementation strategy to advance this. So those were the comments submitted by Weston Consulting pertaining to the application.
Thank you very much, Laura. I've asked Dwayne if he could look into some of this, and Dwayne has some comments he would like to make.
Yeah, so just for council's information, just in terms of other developments that we're aware of, that A2A development has been involved in. So we are, we are aware that there's an application in Central Huron. A2A submitted an application for plan of subdivision in 2013. It was deemed complete and circulated to agencies and public. Comments and concerns were identified during the circulation process, and that particular application did not proceed to a public meeting at that time. Meeting and correspondence was held between A2A and the planning department throughout 2014, but no new information or updates on actions were provided by A2A. And there's been no activity from A2A on those lands, save and except for an appeal that they initiated back in 2016 against the proposed plan of subdivision, which I understand is now fine. It now has its fusion home development in Goderich, which I believe now has registered. I think it's now has its final approval.
Yes.
On that one. In addition, we're aware of A2A development in Meaford. I reached out to my colleague Rob, who's a CIO in Meaford, and he indicated that their application that they received was never deemed complete. The application was received in 2011 or 2012. He couldn't tell me the exact date. He indicated that in 2013, everything went quiet. They haven't heard from A2A since 2013. He did indicate that another development came forward in their situation. They have subsequently, in the last couple of months, reached out to A2A to find out what their intentions are with respect to their development. And they haven't got a response yet from A2A, other than indicating that they're still interested in moving forward with it. But what moving forward with is, that's something that Rob wasn't able to speak to. But he did advise me that there have been no approvals granted by Meaford or by Grey County with respect to that particular development on the basis of lack of activities. So that's just two. There was a third, but through conversation, I think it's been determined that it in fact is, it's not part of an A2A development. Initially it was thought it was, but that through conversation determined that it in fact was not, so.
Laura, can I just ask you a quick question? You said that this would hold up development in North Huron. My understanding is because it's tying up so much of our residential land, that if we were to go to the county for something else, something big or medium size, the county may hold it up because we have this one online. Do I understand that properly?
Well, there's nothing in the provincial policy statement that prohibits planning from beyond a 20-year land supply. So North Huron could plan beyond that. Certainly, even just the A2A lands alone plan beyond what's expected for the next 10 to 15 years. So something else could potentially happen with another piece of land because you can plan beyond that 20 years. But it is just consideration of the surrounding residential lands or the lands available for Wingham or other residential areas. Because obviously this is the largest piece of land within the urban area of Wingham that's available. So it was considered the next logical expansion for any residential land.
Before I ask for a motion, I'm going to throw it out to council. I'd like to hear some concerns or comments from council if there's any. Go ahead, Chris.
I was talking with John Brown, and I think he sent an email to maybe everybody. And I checked on I Googled them A2A just to make sure everything was what he said. And yeah, the Monetary Authority of Singapore's got a deal against them. So they've moved to the Philippines. There's a lot of, and there's about 5 investors that have been getting nothing as far as return. So they're suing them. There's a cloud over them. Not to say that they're still, on the ups, but it makes you wonder. It makes you nervous about having them in your midst, and will they ever follow through? I'm glad you asked that question, Laura, about does it hold us back from any future development? Because I guess I originally thought that it did, so it sounds like it doesn't necessarily.
Because there is still the demand for residential growth, and especially in the Wingham area, because it is identified as a primary settlement area. So that was a concern identified at the time of the last extension was with a significant portion of vacant residential land that's not being developed, does that limit your ability to grow? Just because so many eggs are in one metaphorical basket.
Yeah, but as if a new development started going ahead, then it has precedence, basically, right? It shouldn't be stopped by county or anybody.
For a development, we would consider it like other development. Is it appropriate for the area to scale? While recognizing that there are other areas in North Huron that are designated already future they're zoned future development and designated residential and urban areas outside of A2A lands. So we do already have lands designated and indicated for other growth.
Okay, if I could just
Go ahead.
I'll ask.
Okay. So just before we go to you, Trevor, I just want to say something that I believe it was in Bayfield, maybe it was Central Huron along the lake somewhere. They have a situation where somebody has exactly this residential land and they have it all zoned and they've done nothing with it. And the years have gone by and they've done nothing with it. Along came another developer, and I believe he wanted to develop and was willing to develop right away. The first one that has never done anything and never done anything put a grievance against it. I'm not sure how that turned out, but it probably held things up pretty good.
And that is something to consider too, is that any other planning applications, whether it be an official plan change, a zoning change to change from future development to residential or a plan of subdivision, would still have an appeal period, so that if someone was opposing it, they could still appeal it, including if A2A did decide to appeal another significant development in North Huron, particularly in the North Half.
That's a very big one on my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, but in saying all that, the biggest concern that the previous council had, and I think, and even my perspective of this council, is they're saying we will be putting forward an implementation strategy. Where was the implementation strategy 2.5 years ago when we asked the questions back then? It just reeks of we're just going to continue to put extensions with no real support about what they're actually going to do and when. And that's the part that I think the ratepayers of North Huron are a little pissy about. Excuse my French. That is the problem with that. The ratepayers of North Huron are hoping and praying for that development to offset tax base that we are struggling with. And, A2A has shown nothing of any importance of this, of wanting to communicate. They just went silent, which doesn't bode well from them wanting to be a partner with North Huron. And that's to me the problem with this, is that I'm willing to be a partner with A2A, but you gotta come to the table. And they're not coming to the table with any significant revelation about when development's gonna start. And until they do, if they were to come with an implementation strategy before July the 2nd, I may consider it. I'm not considering it now, based on what they've provided. Based on the conditions that we gave them 2 years ago, there should be no reason why they haven't registered phase 1. They haven't even indicated in their request for approval what's the holdup. They're not even giving us that. Is it us? Is it them? We're not getting any information to tell us what the problems are. All they're saying is we need an extension. And that, to me, isn't appropriate for the development of North Huron. We need development. We've been talking about it for 8 years, 18 years, 25 years. We need it. And until a developer wants to come to the table and talk about real, true development, they're not going to get a vote for an extension from me. So that's my beef about this whole application process. I'm more than happy to give them an extension if they're willing to come to the table and tell us what they need. But they're not telling us what they need. They just want an extension and they want it open-ended. So that's the problem I have.
Any other questions? Did you have more to say, Chris?
I think Kevin did.
Oh, sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
Through you, Reeve. Are you aware of anything through the county for conflict resolution for absentee landlord? I'm just thinking about this property could sit dormant when it is an appropriate spot to do a expansion of a subdivision. Of how long someone could hold a municipality at bay with a blank piece of property before, or is there any recourse in conflict resolution of the township being able to expropriate that property back so that someone else, or is it strictly possession is 9/10 of the law and that could sit as long as they want to let it sit there?
I don't believe there's anything at the county level doing. I don't know if any provincial experience you have, but I believe it's really just if it's owned by a private landowner, it's with them and how they choose to use or not use the land. There are other examples around, not necessarily the most desirable development. They have gone for generations with families. They're large pieces of land that have always been designated. This one is just unfortunately immediately adjacent to a landlocked municipality as well, because there's no real room for further expansion on others given the municipal borders. So I don't believe there's anything.
Any other questions or comments? I'll let Kevin go first, then or Chris go first, and then I'll let you go. Trevor.
Yeah, I guess it's mirroring a bit of Kevin's. I was just wondering, okay, if it was denied, what's the consequences? They're going to have bare land. I guess we would hope that they would sell it, but it does become a bit of an issue. Just down the road.
Yeah.
Would it limit them to reapply, say they got their everything straightened around in 10 years, so there's no problem them reapplying to go at it again, eh?
Right.
If they still owned it?
Yeah, if they still owned it at that time and they were in a position to submit a plan of subdivision, they would have to start over, and they would be evaluated at the planning criteria of that day. So whether that's different policies or considerations, servicing capacity of that day would be taken into consideration, for example, but they would be able to apply because this plan of subdivision would no longer be applied to the property. So the zoning would remain unless North Huron chose to remove that zoning, but then that would also give them the appeal rights against removing that zoning, but they could do a new plan of subdivision if they wanted at that time, or do it in phases, or propose to to have several owners, there's lots of options in the future.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up to Councillor Faulkner's question, it begs the question about, hindsight's always 20/20. Wish it was that property became municipally owned first, then sold. Because how we do it generally is we put a condition on it. If you don't do the conditions within a certain amount of time, the ownership comes back to the municipality. And that's what's been done on some commercial properties and stuff like that. That gives us incentive. That makes the property owner have some incentive. Because if they choose not to do it, then the municipality can get the back money, get that ownership back at the same value that they sold it for, and everybody goes as if nothing ever happened. Problem is, it didn't come into the municipality first, and now we're stuck with the who they got as an owner, and everybody was happy with the ownership at the time because there was nothing to say why it wouldn't go on. But after 6.5 years and more, and all of the communication and the literature that's out there, there's no indication that there's everything going to get done. And that's the struggle, and that's the problem I think that councillors here today have, and I know I have from probably the minute I stepped on council.
Having said that, I'm going to read the motion that I think should be there. That the Council of Township of North Huron hereby recommend that the Huron County Council deny the request by Weston Consultant, the agent, on behalf of Wingham Creek A2A Development, Inc., for an extension of draft plan approval of plan of subdivision file 40T12000001, and that the council's resolution be forwarded to the County of Huron. Do I have a mover? Anita and Paul.
I just have one, sorry, I do have one other question. Laura,
Yes.
through you, Reeve, when they say they fully intend to develop the lands in accordance with the approved, after July the 2nd, they can't. They actually can't develop any lands without a subdivision agreement.
Right, not
Right?
without having draft approval.
Draft approval. So their comment about saying we don't necessarily care what you motion here tonight, we intend to develop the lands, they in all honesty, they cannot
No, not without draft.
without draft plan approval. So they have to come here anyways,
Yeah.
in order before shovels in the ground. So at the end of the day, I hope to see them before July the 2nd is what my comment would be.
Okay, the motion's on the floor. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to 7.1.3. And this is the site plan agreement with AJ Holdings Limited. And Laura, I believe you're going to take over again.
Yes, this is my last item for council tonight. So this
We're
is.
just on a roll.
Yeah, oh, it's a busy night. So, so this is for two site plans and site plan agreements, but they're being addressed together in one presentation and one report. There. So it is the two first site plans submitted for the residential development in the new subdivision in Blythe, otherwise known as the Rutledge subdivision. The GJAJ Holdings Limited plan of subdivision was given draft plan approval in May 2018 and obtained final approval by Huron County in February 2019. The two site plan applications propose to construct multiple attached dwellings on the first two blocks along Rutledge Street east of Queen Street. So this is the new L-shaped road that will extend into the subdivision and then go south to meet up with North Street. Block 1, the block on the north side of Rutledge Street, is proposed to be developed with a multiple attached dwelling with 3 units. And Block 2 on the south side is proposed to be a 4-unit multiple attached dwelling. Items for consideration with the site plan were parking, landscaping, building layout, grading and drainage, and site servicing. So you can see here on the aerial photo, this is the entire property that was given draft plan approval for the subdivision. Block 1 is outlined in blue and block 2 is outlined there in purple. The subject lands are designated residential in Schedule B of the North Huron official plan and are zoned R2-17, residential medium density special zone in the North Huron zoning bylaw. The special zone recognizes that Queen Street is the exterior side lot, allowing both proposed residential units to front onto Rutledge Street, and also recognizes a reduced minimum lot depth of 32 meters. The proposed site plan, which I will go to here, you can see this is the draft plan approved plan of subdivision, so with the two blocks outlined there in red. So this is the 3-unit multiple attached dwelling. The proposed site plan complies with the provisions of the North Huron zoning bylaw concerning the applicable residential zone, building setbacks, lot coverage, landscaped open space, parking and driveway provisions, and planting strip requirements. A board-on-board fence, 1.5 meters high, is indicated on the site plan for Block 2 here, in lieu of a planting strip to provide privacy and separation from the abutting residential property to the south of this block. During the review of the site plans, they were reviewed by North Huron staff, the township engineer, and Huron County Public Works, and all comments received from them concerning lot grading, tree preservation, and site water and sanitary servicing have been addressed through revisions to the site plan, and there are no outstanding staff concerns. So North Huron would be entering into one site plan agreement for each block, and I'm recommending that North Huron Council approve the site plans and pass the bylaw allowing to enter into these agreements.
So I have a motion that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of Laura Simpson, planner, regarding the proposed development at the GJAJ Holdings Limited, Block 1 and 2, Rutledge Street, Blythe, Township of North Huron, Plan of Subdivision, Plan 173, Part Block D, E, and F, and further that the council approve the proposed site plan agreements, and further that council deem the adoption of bylaw number 35-2019 and bylaw number 36-2019 to be time sensitive, and approve an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow the bylaw number 35-2019 and bylaw number 36-2019 to be passed at the April 1st council meeting.
That should be April 15th.
That's what I thought. April, let's switch that to April 15th, everyone. We're a little late.
I'll move.
Trevor's gonna move. Rick's gonna second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? There we go, it passed.
Thank you. That's
Thank
it
you,
for me
Laura.
this evening.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. 7.1.4 tonight, appointment of an alternate and position descriptions report, that the Council Township of North Huron hereby receives the report of the clerk and health safety coordinator dated April 15, 2019 regarding the appointment of the alternate to the County of Huron Council and position described for Reeve and Deputy Reeve for information purposes. And further, that the council directs staff to prepare a bylaw for the May 6, 2019 meeting, which would permit the Deputy Reeve to act as an alternate for the Reeve of Huron County Council. And further, that council directs staff to prepare for the May 6, 2019 meeting an amendment to the bylaw 116-2017 North Huron Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw, which will adopt the position description for the offices of Reeve and Deputy Reeve as scheduled to the bylaw. Do I have a mover? Anita? Paul seconds. Questions or comments? Go ahead.
It just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm not getting any younger.
Not, well, yeah, you only have one pair of glasses, but I think it's so important that our concerns in this municipality are carried forth to county. And I think just for that reason, we've got to have always a person there.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Trevor.
I just would like to, kind of give a shout out to Carson. He prepared this report, and I would I would suggest it's a well-documented, well-prepared report to allow, to get us an understanding of what actually has to happen. So I just wanted to pass along that, Carson. That's an excellent report, so thank you very much for that.
Thanks. All in favor? Unanimous, it carries. 7.2 is the financial department, 7.2.1, 2019 BIA budgets, that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby adopt 2019 Wingham and Blythe BIA budgets as presented, and further that the levy amounts be included in the 2019 Township of North Huron budget and tax levy. Do I have a mover? Anita, seconder. Chris, questions or comments? All in favor? Carries. 7.2.2, 2019 draft rates for fees bylaw. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the 2019 draft rates and fees bylaw for information purposes, and further that the staff be directed to prepare a bylaw adopting new rates and fees at the May 6, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? I have Kevin. Do I have a seconder? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Should we have a-
I think Sean and Don
Sean.
want to speak to the report.
oh, I'm sorry, Sean. Before we take a mover and a seconder, Sean, we'll start with Sean.
Sorry, Reeve Bailey, if it pleases council, 7.2.3 actually feeds into 7.2.2, so we'd like to request that it be dealt with first.
Okay, so we'll put the other one on hold. Is that okay with you, Donna?
Yes.
It's okay with council? Okay, we're gonna go to 7.2.3 first then. Connection fees and charges that the Council Township of North Huron hereby received a report of the Director of Public Works dated April 15, 2019 regarding proposed connection fees and charges for information. And further, the proposed fee structure be incorporated into the consolidated fees and charges bylaw. That's it? Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Reeve Bailey. This one's a wee bit complicated or complex, so I'll try to get through it without creating too much confusion. Basically, the reason that this is in front of council for consideration is, as everyone's aware, we're seeing a lot of development in the township right now. A lot of very interesting development that deals with fourplexes, multi-residential units, that sort of thing. So as staff was working through the application of fees and charges, we noted some areas that we thought we would bring forward to council for consideration. And before I dive into this, I just wanted to stress that this has to do with connection fees. It's nothing to do with development charges. Those are a separate entity and applied per the fees and bylaws. So what we're talking about here is a practice that's been going on since approximately 2010. And the approach that was taken is that everybody was buying into capacity, the remaining capacity of our water and our wastewater systems. When we looked at this, we kind of came at it from a different approach and said, okay, the capacity that our systems have belongs to North Huron. That's North Huron's water system. It's our North Huron's wastewater systems. The cross-border servicing agreement is very clear, and that's giving bordering municipalities the opportunity to buy into what we already have, our capacity. So we thought that maybe taking a slightly different approach to this for internal development might be more appropriate. So as I said, development fees have nothing to do with this. Cross-border servicing agreement is what it is, and in no way are we implying or suggesting that would be altered or changed in any way. That being said, what's in front of council right now is an opportunity to look at the way we charge North Huron development, or North Huron connections to our water and wastewater system. The first place to start, once we know what we're charging. Right now, the way we charge is based on capacity. So if you want to hook a single detached residential home to our system, it's going to cost you $2,500 for a water hookup. $3,500 for a sewer hookup, plus time and material to get from the street to your property line. So a good average or a good example would be, average would be roughly $8,000 to tie in. This becomes much more complicated if you're building a fourplex or a multi-res. Then we get into that whole capacity assignment where the developer would come to, or the builder would come to North Huron and say, I'm building a rental fourplex. I need 3 cubic meters of water. So we, per day, based on our assessment for the building. We would test that assessment to make sure we agreed with it. Then we would charge 3 times $2,500 and 3 times $3,500, plus your fee to get to the, from the road to the building. So you're looking at, I'm gonna test my math here, 18,000 plus your hookup. So you might be in the neighborhood of $20,000 in that example. That's if that building's gonna be a rental. If it's a fourplex, and I use a fourplex because we've been dealing with this type of an example lately. If it's a fourplex, it's gonna be a freehold, meaning 4 individual people buy that, their particular piece of that, there's going to be 4 services. So in that case, you're gonna pay $2,500, $3,500 plus connection fee for each of those services. So now you see where there's the potential for question and there is the potential for confusion in this. So what we did is we took a step back and we looked at, so what we're always striving for is consistency within the county. So we tried to keep Huron County as our target. And as it's in council's package, you can see that there were a number of different, these things were like snowflakes. Everybody was different in the way they were applied. North Huron, I've just described. Huron East, they were a fixed $2,500 and $2,500 for water and sanitary per connection. No development charges. Blue Water has a fixed $5,000 fee, and if you don't use all of that $5,000 to tie your system in, they rebate it. Central Huron is $250 for water connection, $150 for sanitary, plus your time and materials, and no development charges. So, and on it went. As I was going through this, the one structure that struck me as intuitive and clear was what's being used in South Huron right now, and they base it on zoning. So there's no question about how much water do you need. You're not buying capacity, they call it frontage charge, but you're not buying capacity. We're not counting services going into the property. It's what is the property zone? Because the zoning would dictate, arguably, how much consumption is going to be needed by that particular facility. So in keeping with that kind of an approach, and theirs is extremely simple. There's 3 different zones, bang, 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 that's it. We looked at it and thought we could come up with a pretty intuitive, mutually functional system by tying it to zoning, as you can see in your package, where we would look at R1 and R2 as classified as low density residential. Unless the R2, because that's a tricky zone, unless the R2 was considered medium, which would be a triplex or a 4-unit structure, then that would take one more step up the rung for charges. Core commercial we looked at as being similar in consumption to R2, so we set that price the same. Community facility is a wild card, so we tied it to some of the commercially zoned facilities and light industrial, which is the next step up the rung. And then, of course, your high density residential, being your nursing homes and apartments, that sort of thing, take another step up, and then you get into your heavy industrial. So basically, what's put in front of council tonight is a fee structure that goes from $2,500 per structure on the property up to $6,500 per structure on the property. We think it's simple. It's very easy to apply. And again, the idea was that, we wanted to send the message out that North Huron's open for business at the risk of stealing from the premier. So the idea was that this becomes very, very intuitive for developers and builders. It does allow us to collect some fees to go towards capital, because that's where this goes. And then once we have that, once we've got that development, we've encouraged that development, then we have the structure that our treasurer already has in place, where there's monthly collection of capital, there's, and then the natural fees and charges. So I hope that that's fairly clear. Under that structure, under the example that I gave you earlier, just so council's aware, this would represent a reduction in fees to developers. There's no question about it. That fourplex that I talked about that had 4 unique hookups goes from 24,000 down to 3,500, because it's one fourplex. It's zoned R2. It's $3,500 fee. Of course, the development charges are on top of that. The building fees and all those other associated costs are on top of that as well. But it does indeed represent a reduction in some cases.
But you're not suggesting that there'd be one hookup for a fourplex, that we wouldn't do something like that. Even if it was a rental, you still have 4. If it was a 4 rental, you'd have 4 water mains going in, would you not?
No, it's just a larger main. See, the ones that were approved tonight were rental units. And they have a larger single water line and single sanitary come in. And then once they get onto the property line, they manifold off to the 4.
So just a quick question then, if somebody were to buy that and decide to turn that fourplex into, like we have at the Junction Place, where there's all those houses in a row, and sell them, does he run into a problem then because you have one trunk coming in?
At that point, that particular construction wouldn't be allowed to be sold, severed, until the lines were brought
Put
in
in that.
individually. Yeah.
And then he would collect 3,500 and all for that.
Well, and at that case now, again, Dwayne or Laura would be able to help with the zoning piece, but that fourplex that was a rental was an R2, zoned R2 residential. I'm not sure if that would be brought back to 4 individual R1s if they qualify and were allowed to sever. It would stay as an R2. Okay. So in that case, there'd be no additional fees. The fee was purchased or paid on development.
Let's throw it out to you. Oh, sorry, are you done, Sean?
That's done. It's just this was something that we wanted to bring forward to council for discussion, because we're getting a lot of these questions coming at us right now by developers and potential developers.
I'm gonna throw it out to council for questions, comments, concerns. Start with Trevor and then we'll go to Paul.
Through you, Reeve. Sean, are we, in your discussions with developers, is the connection charges a hot button topic that they're suggesting are out of alignment with where they normally develop?
Through you, we've actually avoided the conversation right now because we wanted to have this discussion, and let's use that fourplex, that freehold fourplex as the example. Right now, you've got development charges. If that building was built in Wingham, your development charges are going to be $4,460 per unit. So times 4, you're 16, 17, almost 18,000 for development charges for the fourplex.
And at 30,000.
Add 24,000 for connection fee. Add another, we'll call it $5,000 for all your building permits and that sort of thing. Before shovels touch the ground, you're $40,000 to $50,000 or more. And that's actually what drove the conversation. We looked at that and said, okay, let's.
So we're just having the conversation about Paul was next, sorry.
More or less, I think goes along the same, just are the developers liking what you gave us last there?
I have not vetted this with any.
Oh, okay, you meant,
No,
it hasn't even gone.
No,
Okay.
this was, although it was posted Friday, this has been an internal conversation and we needed to get feedback from council.
So this would be a great saving for anybody that's doing a fourplex or a threeplex at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it would be a reduction for anybody.
Yeah.
If it's a single residential, you're gonna go from 8,000 to probably 4,500 to 5,000 to get the services. And then if you do get into, the nursing homes, the apartment, which would be
Yeah.
an interesting structure, it would be a sizable reduction upfront in revenue.
So, go ahead, Travis.
So I will say though, we have, as development charges and connection fees kind of coordinate in this discussion, we have, the development charges in the municipality have been not, whatever's been recommended has never been went to the full recommendation. We've always backed it off the development charges to kind of subsidize, to make sure that we're not overcharging for development. So the conversation is that if when the development charges discussion comes up again, if we do this, then the conversation is, do we rejig or reinforce what our development charges are? Because we're gonna still have development charges. I think development charges are here to stay. At least in our municipality, I hope, and across the province, I hope. But, I think, as this would make it a lot simpler for people to understand what their costs are without necessarily contacting the municipality to find out what their costs are. There's still gonna be issues with, can we afford, and again, we don't have a lot of, this is not significant residential development or huge development in the municipality, so our revenue reduction, I don't think would be, correct me if I'm wrong, not massive in a sense of where we're getting this revenue now. I just don't see it to be a huge deal overall. I think we could relook at it when we come up to the development charges discussion, if the connection fees were looked at to be a deterrent or we weren't getting what we thought we were gonna get at that time.
I want to kind of stay off the development charges for right now because that is a conversation for another day, but staying with the waste and water. If we make this move, does that mean the taxpayers of North Huron will end up paying because we have employees, et cetera, working on this, right? Where we would normally have charged the new developer. Are we going to be able to cover our cost? Because covering the cost is the main thing and a bit aside for the wear and tear on the vehicles that we're using. That type of thing, are we covering that?
Absolutely, the time and material, in all of the examples throughout the county and including North Huron, time and material is always included. So whatever it costs for us to get that service from the main to the property line is recovered at our standard billing rate. And our standard billing rate is established to cover wear and tear.
Okay. If council doesn't mind, I'm going to slip it over to Donna here and ask Donna what kind of an effect that's going to have on our 2019 budget, if we have any predictions, or is this going to be a great cost to us, or would we be better ahead to have the development?
Well, so what we had in the past was 2,500 and 3,500. I was just gonna take a look in the budget and see how much we had estimated to bring in under those charges for this year.
And this is just the water and wastewater. This is not development we're talking.
Yep, that's right. So for the sewer department, we had only budgeted for one connection at $3,500. And then in the water department, we had budgeted for can't find it on the right line here. So we budgeted for 5,000 for two connections there in water. So that's the only impact we have on the budget is in those, that's the two amounts we had budgeted for.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? Okay, so we have, I think I've already read the bylaw. So do I ask for a second? Do I have a mover? Chris, seconder, Paul, all in favor? Carries. Now, we'd like to go back to 7.2 now. Okay, so let's go back to 7.2.2, and that is the draft rates and fees and bylaws that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby received the 2019 draft rate and fees bylaw for information purposes, and that further that the staff be directed to prepare bylaws adopting new rates and fees at the May 6, 2019 council meeting. Do I have a mover? Anita, do I have a seconder? Rick? Before I call all in favor, questions and comments? Seeing none, I call the vote. Passes. Okay, I do believe there were 7.3 recreation and community services. 7.3.1 is a Muskrat Festival, musical Muskrat Festival. Request to be recognized as a municipality significant event. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby support the request of the Musical Muskrat Festival Committee to make application to the LCBO for a special occasions permit and to hold a beer garden at the Riverside Park and Libero Field on Friday, June 7, 2019 and Saturday, June 8, 2019. And further, the council proclaims the event of municipal significance. And further, that the council authorizes the exemption of the noise control bylaw 2009, extending the noise bylaw from 11 o'clock to 1 a.m. on the dates of Friday, June 7, 2019 and Saturday, June 8, 2019. Do I have a mover? Kevin and Trevor seconds. Questions or comments, concerns? I think this is an annual event and something we've done for years. Seeing none, I call the vote. Passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Public Works and Facility. Okay. Sean, I'm going to let you do a report first.
The only issue, Reeve, is that we've got a bit of an administrative request for council before I get into the report, and that's that there was a mistake on the naming of the property on the bylaws, so we've amended that, and we would ask council to allow us to move ahead with that.
Okay. Just so the public's aware, we're kind of running on a different fuel tonight. Things have been changed around at the last minute, so bear with us. So we have a motion for an easement agreement 7.4.1 that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby amend bylaw number 35-2019 to update the name of the registered owner on concession 1, part lot 42, East Wawanosh Ward, Township of North Huron. I don't have a name. Okay. Do I have a mover? Chris and Paul, all in favor? Passes. Now, Sean.
Thank you, Reeve. Now I can dive into this. This one was really quite complicated, and it took a long time to get through this easement agreement just because of some of the details surrounding it. And for that reason, it's become time sensitive. This has to do with, we were approached last year by a farmer who wants to systematically tile a portion of property. The property we're talking about is the small field on North Street in Blythe that's currently used for agricultural purposes between Blythe and the wastewater plant. His intention was to systematically tile the whole thing, which would have him running tiles through the entire field. North Huron has an easement through that field that houses two things. It houses power for the wastewater plant, and it houses the force main. So all the wastewater from the village has to get to the sewage plant via that force main. So when he came to us and asked to tile it, I said, I have absolutely no desire to see you crossing this main multiple times. We think it's a high risk. So we came back and said, would you consider some sort of a drainage system that saw overland flow? He talked to his drainage people, and they came back and said that's not going to work based on what he's trying to achieve. Elevation's tied into it and all. Now the easement that we hold says that we will not unreasonably refuse him access to to bore under the surface. So what we did is said, come back with a plan that minimizes your intrusion over our line. He came back with a plan that has him crossing, I believe it's at the 3-foot mark, our line is 6 foot deep, in 2 locations. So this easement agreement is, it had to go to legal. It's an easement on his property. So we own the easement, we're allowing him to cross the easement that goes over his land. It's an interesting legal kind of approach to it. And after talking to the surveyors, they said the easiest way to do this is enter into it, have him do the work, then we update the property files to show where the easement actually is to reflect the place where you crossed the line, crossed over our line. Now, the one key thing to note in this whole thing is that in order for us to entertain it, or in order for me to bring it forward to council, we insisted that North Huron was completely indemnified. So I said, you snag this line, you're responsible for the environmental costs associated with it. You're responsible for the pumping costs while we're fixing it. You're responsible for the repairs. So we went through the list and said, and in truth, I thought once he saw that, he would probably come up with a different strategy, but he was comfortable with that. And it's been included in the easement agreement that's before council. Again, I apologize, it took so long to get this through planning and then, or not planning, but through our plans and then through legal, that we're to the point where he was hoping to have approval in short order so he can get the tiling.
Understood. Okay, and I'm going to read the agreement. So the Council Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the Director of Public Works dated April 15, 2019 regarding the easement agreement between the Township of North Huron and Mike SEMA, I apologize, Mike, for information. Further, that the council adopt bylaw 35-2019, being a bylaw authorizing the clerk, the Reeve and the clerk to sign an easement agreement between the Township of North Huron and Mike SEMA. And further, that the council deems its easement agreement to be a time-sensitive matter and approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw 35-2019 to be passed at the April 15th, 2019 council meetings. Do I have a mover? Trevor, it is. Christopher? Questions or comments?
Through you, Reeve. Sean, tell him or suggest to tenderly backhoe where the tile line's gonna go through, so then they don't snag her with the big tile machine.
I believe through you, Reeve, I believe the intention is to hydro back that area, just to stay well away from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He understands just exactly how delicate and critical that line is, so.
Anita?
Yeah, how deep is the wastewater?
6.
I believe it's 6 feet. 6 feet. And he's gonna be running approximately 3, so.
Thank you.
Paul?
Kirk will be on standby. Just a question, like,
We'll make sure that if it's approved by council, it'll be coordinated with us, so we're well aware, and most importantly, Veolia will be aware when the work is being done.
Good, Trev?
I will just say, I think it's a really good part of this agreement to make sure that we're indemnified.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that puts all the ownership on them to know where they're supposed to be, and ultimately, whoever the person has doing the work, I think he will probably know that he's not indemnified of it either. So I think everybody's going to be fully aware of what the costs are going to be, ramifications of that. So I think it's great that we got that in there and move forward with that.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, call the vote. Passes. Okay. 7.5, Fire Department. 7.5.1, the emergency restraining equipment. Do you want to speak to this first, or do you want us to? Go ahead, my friend.
Up to you.
Yeah, go ahead and speak to it.
Okay, so this is the report that was requested, listing all the equipment that's left on site. We've noted the pieces that the fire department want to keep and the other pieces that are surplus. And there's a few pieces that here in Kinloss Fire Department would also like. So this outlines all that. We're also looking for approval to move the equipment that we want to keep to the wastewater treatment plant land, which will be basically behind the new fire hall. So they'll just have to go down North Street, and that'll be their training grounds. And then the other piece would be to authorize to dispose of the leftover equipment, whether it be through gov deals or privately through a junk dealer if it can be sold that way. And the final portion of that is any proceeds that we would get from the sale of that leftover equipment would then go towards the cost of moving to the new grounds.
I see a couple of your captains showed up through you. If you would like, if they would like to speak to this or have any comments, we will allow it.
Oh, where do we start?
Oh.
So I did ask.
I take that back.
I asked the deputy chiefs to be here.
Okay.
Chad, of course, and Matt is away sick, so Assistant Deputy Chief Jeff Housen is here to help answer your questions.
Answer the questions again. I'm going to read the motion first, and we'll have a mover and a seconder and go into questions. That the Council Township of North Huron hereby accept the report from the Fire Chief dated April 15, 2019 regarding the Emergency Service Training Center equipment, and further that the Council approve the Fire Department's request to relocate the equipment identified in the attached photos to the municipally owned Blythe Sewage Treatment Plant property, and further the Council approve donations of the equipment identified in the attached photos to the Huron-Kinloss Fire Department at their expenses. And further that the Council authorizes the Fire Chief to dispose of surplus equipment identified in the attached photos subjects to any and all sales proceeds being credited to the 2019 FPO North Huron only budget. And further that the Council authorize the Director of Finance to amend the approval of 2019 budget to incorporate any and all proceeds of the sales of the surplus training equipment to the 2019 FPO North Huron budget only. Do I have a mover? Anita. Seconder is Rick. Questions, comments, and concerns? Go ahead, Ken.
Through you, Reeve. Is here in Kinloss the only ones that have approached you so far?
I had an individual person approach me asking about the shipping container that worked together, but he hasn't came back to me since. That was about a month ago. He came and had a look at it and then he left. So that was the other inquiry with that.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
The only question, or I guess the comment is that in the report, it says we would get a quote, we get a couple of quotes for the moving of the stuff. Are you just asking to get the quotes, and then those quotes would come back to council for review? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so, and any expenses that are going to be incurred, we will bring back a report.
So I kind of have a couple questions. We've got here, we're going to put the sale of the equipment in the FPO. I'm just drawing a blank. What is the FPO? I know fire
Prevention officer.
Fire prevention
Yeah,
officer.
so this has nothing to do with the agreement partners. So our budget, everything that's filtered through the fire department budget is also kind of shared with the other municipalities. So this has nothing to do, the training center had nothing to do with the other. So this is totally separate. And that portion of the budget is separate from the fire department.
And my other question would be the moving costs, then is that after the amount of money we get from all the different stuff, or you're taking the money and putting it in the FPO budget and then we're paying separately for the moving? That's the way it is, the second way? Okay, and council's aware of that? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Trevor.
Well, Reeve, So we don't know what the costs of moving are. What I just asked is those costs are coming back here.
Yes.
So
I
the
know.
intention is that the surplus equipment will have been sold or hopefully have been sold by the time we get costs associated to moving the equipment, so we know what the net cost is gonna be to the NPO budget before it's moved.
Yeah, and the question I asked was the money you got from the stuff that you sold, is it going to be put towards the cost of moving the stuff we're keeping or not? And the answer I believe I got back was no, it was separately.
Oh, sorry, I didn't understand. So anything that's sold there would go towards the cost of moving.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thanks for pointing
sorry.
that out, Trevor. Okay, I'm gonna call the vote. All in favor? Passes. Oh, I forgot. Do you have any questions for the gentleman in the back? Okay, fellas. Thank you very much. We have nothing under building department tonight, nothing under child care department tonight. CAO 8.7, do you have anything to do? Not tonight. Number 8, correspondence. There wasn't any, I don't think. No, there was no correspondence. 9, council's reports, Reeve's report. As most of you know, I was away for a few days, so it should be a quick report. So, the EDC meeting, the Economic Development Committee meeting, I believe Jordan Hodgins has put his name forward as being the deputy chair. Our deputy chair has stepped down. It was a good meeting. We had bankers there to help us understand moving forward how, and we're going to have another banker with another special ability meet with us again to talk about how development actually works, where the money comes from, how it gets there, and where we're going with it. And it was very interesting to hear his story and some of the stories he had to talk about. The other one of note only is Michaela Ashley turnout. We were all there, pretty well all there. And it was a fantastic day on the Michaela Ashley Day in North Huron. Ainsley, yes, thank you. It was a very well, a lot of people turned out to that. It was very well attended. And we all enjoyed ourselves, I'm sure. So go ahead, Dwayne.
I just have, received this today, so I just thought I'd pass it along. It was an email from Sean Laughlin, who was the organizer of yesterday's event. And he just wanted me to pass along the Blythe Lions Club sincerely thank and truly appreciate council's attendance on Sunday and the presentation that was made. As a result of the event, nearly $450 was raised for Sick Kids Hospital and the Blythe Lions Club, in addition to several dozen pounds of food taken in that will be donated to the North Huron Food Share in the coming days. It was an amazing day, and I received numerous comments from people who thought it was pretty nice that the majority of council was in attendance. So I just want to pass that along.
And just for the public's awareness, Trevor was going to be there, but something came up, so we would have had full council there. But we do realize we have lives outside of council, so sometimes that takes precedent.
I would prefer been where you guys were than where I was.
Okay, so council member reports, verbal or written. Does anyone have anything they'd like to talk about for where they were and what they've done in the last couple of weeks? Go ahead, Trevor.
I did want to actually just another good news story of here in Wingham. The Western Ontario Athletic Association was garnered acceptance to the Ontario Softball Hall of Fame. I believe that's what they were garnished not too long ago. So that is an exceptional an accomplishment for the WOAA. They have been in existence over 75 years here in Wingham and have been an enormous support of recreational sport within North Huron and the surrounding area. So, I would sincerely congratulate them on their accomplishment of being inducted to that Hall of Fame. That's an exceptional thing that should be definitely noted within the municipality.
Thank you, Trevor. Anyone else? Seeing none, we're going to move on to bylaws. I think tonight I'm gonna hand the bylaws over to Barb to read because I think there's some changes in them and she's more aware of them than I have. You see, I've been working off a piece of paper. Do you mind, Barb? Sure, you can have this copy if you want. I do appreciate this.
Okay. So bylaw 35, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve and clerk to sign on behalf of council and an easement agreement between the corporation of the township of North Huron and Michael Sertzima be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? Paul, seconder, Rick? All in favor? Passes.
Okay, bylaw number 36, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan control agreement between the corporation of the township of North Huron and GJAJ Holdings Limited to permit the construction of a 3-unit multi-attached dwelling on Block 1, Rutledge Street, Plan 173, Part Block D, E, F, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron, County of Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? Anita and Trevor? All in favor? Carries.
Bylaw number 37, 2019, being a bylaw to authorize a site plan control agreement between the corporation of the township of North Huron and GJAJ Holdings Limited to permit the construction of a 4-unit multi-attached dwelling on Block 2, Rutledge Street, Plan 173, Part Block D, E, F, Blythe Ward, Township of North Huron, County of Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Do I have a mover? I have Kevin and Chris. All in favor? Passes. That's it. Okay. Do we have a closed session tonight? Okay. Announcements. The next regular council meeting will be held on Monday, May 6, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the North Huron Council Chambers. Other business? Not seeing any. We're going to now go into closed session and reporting out that the Council of Township of North Huron hereby proceed at 7:40 into closed session. An in-camera session closed to the public to discuss the following. 2K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be appealed to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board 2001 C25 S 239/2/2017 C 10 Schedule 1 S 26 and 2F advise that the subject is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for the purpose of the Blythe Memorial Hall. 2 is 2K, position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality of the local board 2001 C25 S239 2017 C 10 Schedule 1 S26 Knights of Columbus. Do I have a mover? Trevor and Anita. All in favor? Carried. We're going to take a 5-minute break.